What's up, this is Dr. Ozzy. I'm going to be taking you through how I made my track, BLT. I'm going to break this down into structures, grooves and beats, vocals, drops, and some tips and tricks here and there. So structure. I have a 2-measure rule. It's where I create a 2-measure space for DJs to mix my song easily. Every 2 measures, there's a change in the track. One right here. There's one right here. And then so on. But in this case, I broke this rule. I use 1 measure of a quick build to introduce the next part of the drop, which happens to be the biggest change, which is this part right here. So when it comes to the drops, each drop is 4 measures, but instead of a change every 2 measures, there's a change every 1 measure. By change, I mean changes in the pickup and downbeat. A pickup would be on the 4th beat of the measure and the downbeat on the 1st beat. The orange ones are the downbeats, so that's the 1st beat of the measure, and the pink ones are the pickup of the measure, so that's where the song is going to get picked up again in the drop. So, like I said, I'm changing everything every measure instead of every 2 measures. This song is made in 150 BPM, 4/4, that means 4 quarter notes in 1 bar. So if we were to listen to this track on a click, each 4 I'm doing a change. Pink. 1 is the downbeat. So if you pay attention to the beat that you're playing, for example, let's just say the drums, every time it's doing a stop, a play and pause kind of situation. To introduce the next measures. It's just doing different kinds of things to like make it more interesting. Same thing is happening to the synths. So further explaining everything just connects really well as measures. It just makes things more interesting and versatile. On to the next thing. Bridge is pretty much a carbon copy of the intro, same 2 measures. There's the same pattern following on the drops. To conclude, I used 2 measures of my intro to make my outro. With the help of some effects, changing the pitch of the vocals and the cowbell, it ties everything together neatly. A little history about this track, about the lyrics of this track. MagMag came up with the lyrics for a different track. You can hear the old track in the background. It didn't work for that track. I thought, let's see what happens when I slap the vocals on this song. Here's a little tip! Over the years, I've realized that putting the vocals in 2 separate channels, 1 panned hard right and 1 panned hard left, it pronounces better in the big rig systems, I've realized. Let's talk about vocal effects. This one, Deep Mag. I've used this effect on Hardy Hard. Basically, I took the same sample, tuned it down to -12 semitones, so it's an octave lower, with a warp mode set to tones. You can fiddle with the grain size like a nipple, just like to see what's the best setting for your vocal effect, but for me, it's clearly 30 grain size, 30%, I would say. Without any post-processing, it sounds like this. And with pre-processing, it sounds like this. Pretty much, the EQ8 is not really doing anything. Vocoder is making it pronounce a little bit better, so the depth is set to low format, makes it a little bit more understandable. Overall effects. In the group, first thing I'm using is simple delay, set to time mode to make everything more stereo. Next one is filter delay, set to sync mode, quarter notes, to provide a delay effect, hardly any effect on it, just a negative 47 of it, negative 47 dB of it. Reverb to give it more room. Again, not a lot of effect on it, 6.8% of it. Glue compressor for a parallel compression. There's a bunch of YouTube videos on how to do parallel compression, and glue compressor happens to be my favorite. A little bit of EQ to cut off the low end, just to sharpen things up. Valhalla shimmer. This is my favorite plugin. I've used it a lot. Love it. It only is being used only on 4th beat of the 2nd measure. Slap. Let's talk about the groove and the beat of the song. Pretty straightforward. Picking out the right samples, tuning, and mixing your drums is very crucial. Quick tip. Introducing the song without any downbeat or without following each quarter note leaves the DJ hanging. If I mute the cowbell, it sounds very empty. In the loud, big rigged system, it won't be audible enough for them to beat sync the track. When you hear it without the cowbell, it leaves you with only the lyrics and the whoosh effect. Chill. Chill. With the cowbell, it allows the DJ to beat sync. Chill. Chill. So on and so forth. Now, following the 2nd measure rule, I did the same thing with the drum patterns. Introduced the cowbell in the intro, then took it away in the build-up, but brought in taiko drums to give it more of a tribal groove. Brought the cowbell back in the 2nd measure and stopped everything on the pickup. In the drop, it's following the typical dubstep drum pattern, but what makes the groove more exciting is the percussion or the top end. If it were to be just kick and snare, it would sound something like this. But as soon as I add the top end, it's more exciting. It's more of a groove. You don't want to add too much to the percussion section because then you just start to lose the groove. You just want to have a steady downbeat and a pickup just to let it go. It's more recognizable in the 3rd drop where everything is starting to like go crazy. Quick tip. When you're tuning your drums, which as I mentioned before, it's really easy to do it in Ableton. There's millions of other ways to tune your drums, but I tend to work with samples. There's a really easy way to do this. So for example, this kick, you can tune it through the transpose and pull it down or up semitones, but you don't really know what key it is visually. When I play this kick over here, the semitone for this is set to 0 because that's the key I liked and preferred. I trust my ears on this. When I play this sample, it gives me A. That frequency over here, it tells me that that's A. Where I can tell all this is right here in this little corner box. It just, any frequency I go to, it just gives me a frequency key or note. When speaking of drums and effects, they're different for every song. The one that I follow typically is the EQ8. I usually put it on mid side. There's mode, stereo, left or right, and mid side right here. I'm doing parallel compression, 32% of dry wet, multiband compression, just to polish it off a little bit. Now the moment everyone is waiting for, I'm not going to sit here and show you how the synths are made. I just want to show you the structure, how I ended up making this entire song and finishing it and all that jazz. Beginning with the mid basses, it's all just mid bass. There's one bass line that I'm using on Massive, which is this one, that has a low end, but most of them don't. I tend to not use the sub bass in Serum or Massive. They tend to phase out a lot of issues, but mostly all of these basses are made in Massive and Serum. So in the beginning, I'm just using your probably can't hear it yet, but it slowly comes in. Let me vape. That's the Fumpa. A little bit of filter delay. Quick little effect just to add more of a texture. Following with that is the drop. This is the Badum. There's a lot of processing on it, and without all of these effects, it actually doesn't sound bad. But with the effects, and I'm adding quite a lot. Phaser, flanger, simple delay, reverb, and then the good old OTT, sharpening it with the EQ8, a little bit of filter here and there just to like bring it in and out, just like in the build and everything. So, but I felt like the drop didn't have enough mid bass, a little bit over mid tone to it. So I added a mid bass on top of it. It just sounds like hiccups, but it provides the frequency that I need. And then on top of that, there's a mid-high. This is the synth that gives it more of a breathe aspect to it. Made in Volume Shaper for the effect. Resampled it, made it into audio. Call it a day. That one, and then there's a fill over here. The growl. The guns, which is another growl. Let's just listen to it. I tend to have a groove on top of the entire synth work, which involves the atmosphere. Atmosphere is like your top end of your drums. When I added this part, this is the background part, which is this is like an anime girl like screaming or yelling. Weird sound at the back of someone saying something in Spanish. I think I will find the sample right here. I just took this first part of it and then made it a thing. And then it's the same one. This sample is the same guy saying something. Let's find out. What is he saying? Oh, it's just a laugh. But I just warped it completely on Complex Pro and just made it a different sound. And there's a warning sound. And the good old air raid. Why wouldn't you want that? So altogether, so following after that second drop, I would say after the second build up that I did for one measure, it's just craziness again. This one is made in Massive. I think this one is moving around the S loop. I think this is sustain loop. That's what is moving quite a lot. So that's what's happening. And then I took the volume shaper effect again, added the end of that synth. But I added another one, another massive, same synth, a little faster version of it. So altogether, it kind of fits. There's just obvious fills that I've been using this entire time. I'll talk about the sub soon. Alright, so the bridge is pretty straightforward. It's the same thing like I mentioned before, but there is a little whoosh effect and the air raid filtering, lo-fi. Simple. Same thing with the build-up.
Chill, take a breather. See me leaning up against the speaker. When they rave, I move slow-mo. Bitch controls a movement, so my brain's legs and torso.
This is where the things are actually going crazy. The dumb, it is made in Massive again. Most of the work is done with Valhalla Shimmer. Reverb effect, where it seems like it's doing it fast. Like that. But I added the effect, so it gives it more of like a faster feel. Following the same mid bass that I had it in there. For some reason, that mid bass and that synth together are highlighting a certain frequency, so it's making it a lot more stronger than it was supposed to be, but I love it. Same thing, but the drum pattern is obviously changed here because I like changes. Drop 4. I changed it a little bit in the faster version of that synth. And then the outro, which is pretty simple. I just took everything and pitched it down, like I said before. Same whoosh effect. The cowbell is pitched down to -10 semitones. Sub bass. Shut the fuck up, phone. There is a instrument rack. Hip hop. Hippity hop. I've used that sub bass forever. I use it in every track. It's worked out perfectly. It gives the perfect harmonics. I like it. Changed a couple things about the pitch. Other than that, a little bit of distortion, and then I took out the obvious high frequency, so I don't get much of it. To fill the sub a little bit more, I needed some mid section to it, so I added another one. Erosion for the noise, simple delay just for stereo, again, saturator to make it more crazy, OTT to slam it together, and then a little bit of EQ just to give it more of an emphasis. All together. If you have headphones, studio monitors, which I highly doubt some people might have it, I don't know if you do, this will not be audible on a laptop or a phone. The last thing I'm going to mention, just polishing. What do you want to do? If I took all the effects off, it loses its texture.
Chill.
It just sounds empty. But as soon as I add the effects,
Slap. Chill. Take a breather. See me lean.
now, like after you have finished all your parts of the songs, where you have done the drums, you have done the synths, you have done the vocal effects or whatsoever, now it's just the time for you to finding that space of your song, just coloring your song at the end of it. This was a fun way to show you guys my song. I hope you learned something from it. If you haven't checked out my new EP, Vital, please go check it out. Thanks for watching.